Welcome to the Karuna Life. I'm Gina Kitzmiller. For those who don't know me, I'm a professional intuitive. I'm an author, a Reiki master teacher, and I am founder of Trimatri Reiki. And today we are going to have a conversation with Courtney Churry. And Courtney is a very good friend of mine. She's also a very gifted energy healer in her own right. And she has come into, I would say, one of the newer modalities in kind of the world of energy work and healing, and that is emotion code. So, we are going to have a conversation about that today, which I have really been looking forward to. So, Courtney, for those, thank you, one, for being here. For those who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. First of all, I've been excited for this as well. So I started out as a massage therapist. I'm a licensed massage therapist, board certified here in Ohio, the national board certification. So that's a little wider range too. And I'm also a Reiki practitioner and certified emotion code practitioner as well. So I see clients in person and at my office in Heath, Ohio, and then I also can do online sessions as well.
Well, thank you so much for being here because I'm excited for this conversation. So, when we talk about emotion code, first off, can you explain a little bit about what that is for someone who has no idea about emotion code?
Definitely. So, emotion code comes from the thought process that when we experience something that maybe is overwhelming, or if we're in a situation where maybe we are already in fight or flight mode with our nervous system, or the experience in itself is so overwhelming that our bodies are like, hey, you can't process these emotions right now. So, we're just going to kind of tuck this away for a little bit later. What that does is the energy that we feel that is created from the emotions can become trapped in places in the body. And it's a protective measure in the moment because your mind and your body are trying to deal with whatever's happening. You're not in a nervous system regulated state where you can process those emotions in a typical way we would. And so they can get stuck in different parts of the body, those energies. And after some time, if we are maybe not accustomed to different ways of inner work or processing things that, or going back and looking at how we felt about something and seeing if there's some work we need to do there, they can just hang out. And over time, it can contribute to imbalances in the body or in our emotions. And since our bodies are energy, and these are energies from negative emotions we've experienced, it can definitely cause some issues with us feeling blocked for loving relationships or just smooth relationships in general. It can start to influence some issues with tissues and organs and things like that. So, on a more physical level, and really a wide range of things that can result from those energies being stuck in our bodies.
So, when we talk about emotion code and we talk about some of the emotions that come up, are they ones that people would often know that they have, or are these more subconscious? Like I'm carrying shame or guilt and I don't realize that I'm even experiencing those around certain situations?
Right. So it can be both, really. There's definitely things that I think when we're honest with ourselves that we're like, oh yeah, that makes sense of this is a typical emotion that I feel or it's my go-to. And for instance, for me, it's, I've had frustration come up a lot in the course of releasing. It's like now it's just a joke, right? It's like, oh, this is probably going to happen. But I do realize that as I kind of look at my typical way of handling things, especially in the past, that if I wasn't in a place where I felt I could express myself or I had the confidence to do that at that time, that was the emotion that I was going to come up with was frustration. And so I think people will have things that make sense and there will be ones that potentially can come up multiple times because they're each an individual instance. And that just might be your go-to. That might be like the theme that you are here to kind of work through. Um, But then there are definitely ones that are a surprise. And for people who maybe don't see themselves as creative, if creative insecurity comes up, then we might need to look a little further into that and see what it's connected to for it to make sense and resonate with them, because they just don't track on, like, well, I'm not really creative, but it might be just looking at that in a different way because creative can mean a lot of different things.
So it sounds like it gives clients a deeper kind of understanding, maybe, of how they were processing something at that time or the
Sure.
event. Full disclosure, I was like, Courtney has done emotion code on me. She's also done it on my teenage daughter, which we both have found incredibly helpful. And I think that my daughter would be okay with me saying that. But I think for a lot of us, there are situations that we go through. And I think obviously Western medicine, this doesn't replace Western medicine. It doesn't replace mental health counseling. Those are all still incredibly needed. We're kind of staying in our lane here. But I think what it
Right.
can often do is, particularly around emotions that maybe we're not aware of, to even bring it to the surface, to have a conversation. And then someone can take that if needed and even take that into counseling, right? And to have a conversation around, let's say, blaming themselves if that was something they needed to explore a little bit further for themselves. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I find like this, since this is a form of energy work, I like to tell people the example I give is think of this trapped emotion as it's in its own little balloon. And they can be different sizes for each one. And they just are this chaotic energy that's in this balloon. And it could be stuck anywhere in your body. And what we do when we go through is we like poke a little hole in it and allow that energy to start coming out and being regulated and removed from the body. And in that process, it's just completely releasing where that was. And so I find that it is very complementary to people doing counseling and other therapies too. So since this is working with the energy, it's just a different aspect of what you might already be doing with your therapist. I've done a lot of different like talk therapy, but I've also done EMDR with a therapist and a few other modalities. And I still was having like trouble with certain things. And I thought, well, I've done a lot of work in this in particular. And so, but I just needed that extra missing piece. So I think removing the energy of it was where I kind of needed to go from there. So
That makes sense to me. It seems like it is a tool in the toolbox. And so
exactly.
it's a piece that can complement all these other modalities and treatments that someone is doing. Now, I'm wondering, for people that might have trauma or more difficult situations or memories that they're like, I don't really want to go back. Are they reliving those when they're in a session?
Absolutely not. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about emotion code. I have had clients come in. And I usually tell people when they book a session, it can be helpful to think of 2 to 3 things that maybe you find you're either struggling with or that you'd like to look into and see if there's trapped emotions connected. But at the same time, you can come in and do a general search and see what comes up. And through that guidance, I've had people come in and definitely have a situation where they say, I have something in mind, but I really would rather not discuss it. And I think that's kind of fun because I don't have to, know anything. We're just working with the body, what is ready for them to release. So it's really just me kind of helping them along that process. And that's been, I think, some of the most powerful examples to people because the thing I do ask them as we're decoding the trapped emotions there is I'll just say, does this make sense to you? And I have yet in one of those for them to say no. Usually it's like, oh my goodness, yes, that makes sense. And I don't know how that just so there's, kind of this the excitement realization like, okay, this is coming from me. This is what my body and mind is ready to let go of. So those have been really interesting to work with people. And I think that's a beautiful thing about emotion code because, some of these people may have been through a long time of different treatments or whatever they experienced was a long time ago. So they've been living with it for a while and have talked about it a lot or just had it replaying in their mind. And so some of them just may not want to talk about it again. And, I can't really blame them. So that's a very nice aspect about it.
I think that's a good thing because oftentimes, especially if we've been dealing with something for years, it's like I know that even for myself and other people, it's like I don't really want to go back and relive it and have to tell
Sure.
someone else all of the details and go through it again. So I like that we can kind of just take a little shortcut, still get what we need done, and still get the results. So that's good.
Right.
So, Courtney, when we're talking about the emotions, can you explain like how do you know if someone has a trapped emotion during a session?
The honest answer is probably all of us have trapped emotions. And, so the way that we look into that is, I allow people to make some choices on their session. So I have some clients who prefer to stay seated, and we do a form of muscle testing. And the idea behind that is when we ask a question of the body, your subconscious is going to create a vibration, and that's going to either make your muscles strong or weak depending on if it's a true or false statement or question, yes or no answer to those questions. And we start by asking if there are any trapped emotions that this person can release today. And that's kind of a key thing too, because, there might be days I've asked of myself, do I have any trapped emotions I can release today? And my body says no. And it's either because I'm really tired or I'm processing other things, or maybe I just need a rest. And so your body really is a huge part of this because it's not going to allow you to go through a process that's like energy surgery if you're not in a place to handle it. So, the other way that I can do that is I do have some clients that prefer to lie down on the table here, and we will use like a pendulum over top of them just to it'll swing one way, for a yes and one way as a no, as it picks up the energy change from the body. So, that's kind of an interesting one for people because they can watch it and, they know probably what the answer is gonna be a lot of times. And so then to see it shift as that resonates is really, really fun. Plus, they can kind of in that form of it, they can get in a more relaxed state because they're lying down. I dim the lights a little bit, and so they can kind of just relax and see what goes forward.
That makes sense to me. And then, so if you're doing it remotely, how would that work?
Right. So a remote session, we can do them either with the person on like a Zoom call as we're doing, or a phone call, or you can just do it without the person being present. And that's using yourself as a surrogate and in those proxy sessions. And so, and I would be using myself to test on anyways, but it's just whether the person is there watching and interacting or not. So, and the way that I would do that is, I'd take a moment and connect with that person energetically. And then I test myself to make sure, okay, I'm testing the way I say it is I'm testing as, if I was doing it for you, I'm testing as Gina Kitzmiller. And as long as I get that positive answer, then I can keep going. And then at the end of the session, I just break that energy connection and go on with the next thing.
That's all right. That's interesting. And I was just laughing to myself because we have to have client consent. So it's like we can't pick
Yes.
someone to be like, I have a really difficult family member, Courtney, and I'm going to need you to go in. And if you could do emotion
Right.
code on them and just be the proxy. So this is with permission and consent.
Absolutely. And, I am a huge free will person. Permission is huge. The one thing I will say that a lot of people ask about for working on their children through them, and my stance on that is, if we're talking about an underage child, that's still their parent guardian. And if they feel like that is appropriate and best for them, then that's fine. When we start to get toward that teenage years, I suggest to them asking for, permission from the child, because then it's also showing them, that they're becoming an active participant in their own well-being, and also maybe gives them a basis to kind of talk to each other about what happened and what the results were, and if that makes sense to them. If you're 18 and older, that they have to have permission, from the person, whether it's a family member or a child. The one caveat to that though is if we do inherited trapped emotions, it can be removed from any family members in your family line that have also inherited that particular emotion. So while you're not connecting with that person's energy in a specific way to, try to work on them through yourself or through another person, it does, it kind of reverberates through that whole family line. And so that can be a really helpful way to help other family members in the process, with keeping in mind that not every sibling or, family member is going to inherit all the same ones, but there are some overlap. So that can be a way you can do that.
So it sounds like it's almost a form of ancestral healing in a
So
way.
yeah, in a way, yes, yes.
Okay.
So, and this was actually fun because I tested this on my own family, and I went through, and as I was going through all the class sessions, and they have you working on yourself, and I thought, I want to really see with this generational, inherited trapped emotions, how this works, and so went through the process releasing them from myself, and I got to where, I was regularly testing and I wasn't having any that were coming up, so I knew that they were cleared. And then when I got to work on 2 of my children, that was one of the first things I asked, was if they had any inherited trapped emotions from my side, and they both tested no. So that was really interesting to kinda see that confirmation of how it works.
Yeah, that's a really nice validation. So there's
Mhm.
so many ways I think that this could be helpful. Can you describe a little bit like about what's like a typical client's experience with emotion code?
So the initial session is an hour, and usually that one is a little bit longer because where I'm explaining, you get a lot of information out of the gate. I'm explaining very much similar to what we're talking about today, just so people, because some people come in and they don't have any kind of grid for energy work at all, or they might not have even a large background in inner work for themselves. And so this might be the first kind of experience they're having. So making sure they feel comfortable is important. Showing them the charts, explaining how we're going to remove the trapped energies, trapped emotion with a magnet, making sure that they're able to be worked on with a magnet, because there definitely are some people who cannot, and we have modifications for that. Finding out what they're most comfortable with for the session, which way we're gonna go here, and if they do come in with a couple of instances or, difficulties that they'd like to look into, then, we briefly talk about that, and I make notes so that we touch on those things during the session. And then it also gives me a chance to explain the processing time like we have, and, and then just kinda get into it and see. Sometimes people's bodies are a little bit quicker to release, and sometimes it's a little bit slower process, and it just depends on the person. The follow-up sessions are 30 minutes unless they really like having an hour session. In the follow-ups that they choose to do the 30-minute, we do a very short kind of recap of how they're doing, maybe what they were experiencing, what things have been different, and what they would like to continue on unless we already kind of have that down. And if they choose to do an hour, I end that period afterwards with either some Reiki energy balancing or a sound bath or a little bit of both. So really we can kind of do whatever they feel they need at the time.
So you can kind of tailor it to what they're looking for, which when you talk about ending with Reiki and a sound bath, I'm like, that sounds delightful.
Oh, it is. It's so nice.
I know which one
And
I would be choosing.
yes, it's kind of a good way for me to, it gives them some time to further process without us doing really any talking or any, searching work where their mind is maybe going. And before I send them out in the world and it's like, okay, there you go. So it does kind of just create a stair step, I think, between what
The
the work that
process,
they've
yeah.
just done and then leaving. But I mean, I have a lot of people that because they come a little more regularly, they just choose to do the half hour. And at this point, they're probably like, I'm just ready to get them out and I am good to go.
It's like the drive-through, the emotion code drive-through. I'm
Yeah.
in and I'm out. I got stuff to do. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah, some people are very much, yeah, and it's always interesting to see how each client is very different that way. So,
Mhm. It does make it fun. So
it is.
speaking of fun, can we talk about emotion code for animals? Because
Yeah,
this really
absolutely.
goes beyond, which is when you first had mentioned this to me, I was like, it made sense, but I hadn't really thought about it. So,
Right.
so can you talk a little bit about how this can be used for animals? I know Courtney has done this on my dogs because I have three, one of which is a little bit neurotic. So he could probably use another session, Courtney. But can you talk about how that could be helpful for them?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest examples I have is with my own cat. And it's funny because she had lived over the course of the time where I had gotten divorced and was transitioning into this phase of my life. It was a few years, and she stayed with a couple of different people over that time, and I just more recently got to bring her home. And, I knew that there were some unfavorable events that had happened for her during that time. And so she was one of my very first animal test subjects. And I was working on her very early on when she got to come home with me. And I just saw a huge transition, and my children could kind of attest to it because she had been with them at their father's house for a number of years. So they saw how she behaved there versus after we were doing, the emotion code with her. And she had just a lot more peace. She wasn't as anxious when we would leave. And so it was good to kind of be able to see that, and the emotions that came up with her very much made sense to what I knew she had experienced, during all those transitions. Um, we also have worked on horses, and so that has been really an amazing kind of eye-opening part for me because, with horses, they're so intelligent and they are so emotionally connected to humans. And so that was really an interesting opportunity to start with. And so the way that that kind of happened was I actually have a client who has been training horses for about 30 years, and they have some of their own. And he had asked me, well, I have an issue with one of my horses. Do you think this would work for him? And I said, well, we can try it and see, I know that they've talked about that in the training, and I've worked with, your dogs and my cat and with good results. And but this was a great opportunity with a larger animal to, see how that was going to work out. And the difference on that was where with your dog, since happen to be doing that distance, and then my cat she's not very like cooperative as far as me messing with her. So I was working on myself. as proxy. And so all those sessions I had been testing on myself by connecting with them. But for the horses, I could do that directly on them, and they have a different way of responding. So they lean into you. And it's been interesting with seeing how different personalities, even in horses, generate a different feeling when you're testing them, when you're muscle testing them. I notice with the younger horses that I've worked with, they have a little bit stronger movement to you, whereas some of the older ones, they're a little more subtle, and you have to be, have your awareness on and be, picking up on some of those really gentle movements.
Yeah, I was able to go with Courtney when she had a session with 2 horses, and it was really neat to get to watch and to experience. Can you talk about the horse that would kind of show where the emotion was trapped? Because I thought that was so fascinating.
Yeah, the one that, I worked on the most was Doc, and, he is about 6 years old, and, he I don't know that we really looked into exactly where the energy was stored for him, but his came up in, where we connected with how old he was when some of these things got trapped. And it was really fun to have the both the owners there because they remembered things from that time period that happened, and it made sense, and things that I could have never known that this horse had experienced. And so and through releasing those, he has been a lot more trusting with them and more connected. They were noticing that in the working phases as they were training him, there was kind of some anxiousness, maybe not as connected with the owner and trainer as some of the other horses that they had worked with. Their working relationship was kind of struggling. And so since then, they have noticed that that relationship's a lot easier. It's a lot, more calm. He's not picking up on any of the fear feelings or the anxious feelings that he was before.
It's so interesting to me. And was he the one that would like to actually look at the sheet when you would be going
Yes.
through?
Yes. So that was happened by kind of like funny accident because that day, when I had first worked with him, I had the emotion code chart on my clipboard, and my daughter and her friend were on their way to help assist me with it, but they hadn't arrived yet. So one of the owners said, "Well, I'll hold this for you." And as she was holding it, she was close to his muzzle, and he started, like, with his lips, like, she says, "Oh, do you wanna see it?" And she was showing it to him, and we were laughing, and then he started, just kind of nudging with his lips, and I jokingly said, "Oh, he's showing us which, box the trapped emotions are gonna be in," and honest to goodness, it was exactly most of his were all in that area that he had been pointing at with his lips when he looked at that chart, and I'm like, "Okay, well, he knew."
Yeah,
So,
it's
yeah.
just crazy, but I have to say that so when we did it and he was there and I was holding the chart, he very clearly wanted to look at the chart, like, and
Yep.
so I that was my job. I would hold the chart, and I'm not familiar with horses, but you could see he wanted to, like, kind of look at the chart for each one, and
Which is
so
interesting because
yeah.
we had the book there, we had the magnet, and he didn't do that with any of those things, but he did do it with the chart with you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm finding horses, like, fascinating lately. I just it's interesting. It's been coming up a lot, and then you could see it even as a bystander, like, when she was asking questions, on some of them, you would see the lean it that would kinda lean into her to push or kind of that
Right.
lean out. So it, really just opened my eyes, I think, to a lot of different things that I hadn't really considered, in particular around animals. So And some of
Definitely.
the emotions were interesting, I would say, even for my dogs. We have one, I was talking about Eddie George is like my little Zen. I call him my kindergarten mentor. He's just the sweetest, quiet, kind dog. And he even had some emotions like come up that surprised me because he's so
Mhm.
even keel that I hadn't realized that there were things that had happened that I think had imprinted on him a little bit. And so then I also have Benny is the one who's a little more neurotic. He tends to bark. He carries a lot of energy in him.
Mhm.
And so like there's a lot of different areas of releasing things that have happened to Benny from the time when we got him that I thought that's what I had Courtney work on because I had sensed and I had done Reiki on him. We've done other things, but I think the emotion code was helpful in really getting to maybe some of those more like unconscious emotions that he
Mhm.
felt when we obtained him, because there was a lot, I think, around, if I remember correctly, it was more like abandonment and things like that. So, our pets really do, I think, experience a lot more than what we sometimes give them credit for. We kind of think like, oh, they're here, but yet
Mhm.
they're beings and they are having their own experience. So I think emotion
Yeah.
code can be incredibly helpful for that.
Absolutely, and I think too, as you were talking, it absorbed emotions with pets because they are companions to us, and they're living in the same environment, but maybe don't have the same ways of being able to express what they're picking up on or what they're sensing or feeling from us. And so they can definitely, just as we can absorb emotions from other people, emotional energy, they can do the same thing. And I think that because that's a little bit of their role as companions to us as pets, they might be even a little bit more susceptible to absorb trapped emotions than we are.
So what would you say some signs would be if so someone has pets, or horses, like, that you would say there might be something that they wanna take a look at?
Sure. Anything that you are perceiving as a block or difficulty, um, or some kind of repeating pattern for sure. So, for instance, with the horse that we were talking about, they noticed that there was a real hesitancy. There was some anxious feelings but only when they would start to go for training. So there was this kind of pattern of things that were happening. And because they had such a long time in that field, they could kind of identify, well, I've had other horses where the connection was just much easier and they didn't necessarily kind of have a catch with or a block with this area. And no matter what we do, we're not getting past it. We're not able to kind of resolve it. So, if you notice things like that, I know with my cat, I did a lot with she would just have periods of time where she was crying and she had everything. And there was no rhyme or reason to that we could figure out of, okay, well, this is what she's trying to tell us. And so, things like that, behavior issues that are just kind of maybe out of the ordinary, or they could be chronic, they could be regular behavioral issues that you're trying everything and, it's not medical, there's not a physiological issue that you're seeing, and you just can't put your finger on it. Sometimes that can be from, a trapped energy influencing the body that way.
Alright. So I wanted to ask, I know you have permission from a few of your clients, to kinda talk about their experiences. So is there anything that you'd like to share from their perspective about how emotion code has been helpful?
Sure, yes. So one of my clients, Kathy, she had shared about coming to a session with me. She came in, she was one of those that she had an idea of something, a scenario that had happened in her life, but she really didn't want to talk any details. And so that was fine. And it wasn't until after she kind of wrote a little testimonial that I realized how things connected for her, and that was pretty amazing. But she had actually, years ago, she had been let go from a very high profile position in a company. And it was, because someone had been very uncomfortable with her high rise, very fast progress in that company. And it was very painful for her. Here she had been doing really well, and a person who was her boss felt threatened by her and just let her go. And so over time, she did not realize just how much that had still impacted different areas like her self-worth or her intelligence, her perception of her own intelligence or her value. This is someone who is really very good about looking internally and taking some steps to resolve things, in herself. And so she said what she was very surprised about was how the session uncovered these layers of emotion that she didn't even realize she was still living in. And so after identifying those, and she took quite a bit of time for processing afterwards. And hers is kind of unique because she could feel a lot of that shifting. And so now she said that she can look at that chapter of her life without having any kind of trauma response or nervous system activation like she would have before. So it goes back to being able to look at things in that film strip of logically, like, yes, that happened and I remember everything that I felt or what was difficult, but it's not hijacking my body or, creating that response that it used to. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think for a lot of us, it's at least I notice this even in myself. Sometimes we have like a very logical response. So it's like
Mhm.
something happens, we know we've kind of processed it, but then we kind of check a box and it's like, well, I've moved on, right? Like I got a new job or maybe I found a new relationship.
Right.
And we kind of go logically, I have moved forward. It's not something I'm thinking about or ruminating about. And yet, there can still be some of those emotions that are still kind of being held in the field that we're not really aware of. So it sounds like emotion code can be really helpful for things like that.
Definitely. And I think the thing to keep in mind too, because, when that does happen, a lot of us probably have a tendency, this is me talking about myself, it is like, well, I thought I got through that. I thought I moved past that. And it comes back to giving yourself grace because it's not healing is that onion, the layers. It's not linear and timing is important. So, you very well might have gotten to this huge breakthrough point and you're not necessarily operating out of that hurt space anymore, but you needed to do all that to get here where your body's like, okay, now we can release this extra energy that is associated. So I definitely want people to realize this doesn't mean you didn't do enough work, in whatever therapies or whatever modalities you did previously about it. It doesn't mean that you retrapped anything or that those things didn't work. It's just like this is another aspect, a different key to it. It's
It's
another
another
puzzle piece.
layer. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's another layer
yes.
of healing is the way that I would probably explain it. And it's the same with, energy work where we talk about people will say, gosh, that came up again, and it's like, but
Right.
oftentimes I think sometimes we process things logically because we're doing the thought process and we're thinking through things, but there's still that emotional piece, that emotion that's
Mhm.
either asking to be felt or it's asking to be released. So I think it's just a different layer to it. That is when you're ready then it will present itself and the tool will present itself as to how to go ahead and remove this from the energy body.
Absolutely.
Are there any other stories that you want to share? I'm kind of curious just because the horses are fascinating to me. I'm kind of curious about what the owners of the horses have said.
Yeah. So Monty, he's worked with horses for 30 years. And he said that this year he learned something new about his own horses and that the emotions can be read and that bad emotions can be cleared. And this way, the horses can feel better or even perform better, just like we can. So, for his example, he'd been training this 6-year-old gelding, and the horse was unsure and very nervous about new things. And working through he's found the emotion codes and had the horse read and cleared of these bad emotions. And he felt that the horse improved with his attitude and his bonding both. They're saying that this practice benefits the horse and the rider and is healthy for progressing or improving the relationship between the two. So,
That's really
very
powerful.
excited.
I love that. All right. Well, I want to be respectful of time. So, is there anything else you'd like to say about emotion code or something that you would like for people to know as we wrap up?
I think just that it's something that's good to try and see if this is something that resonates with you. It can be something for a time, or it can be something that feel there are several aspects in your life that this makes sense to work through and just, release these energies. Just sharing with people that it is an energy modality. It is part of that energy aspect of our being. So while it can include a spiritual aspect if you wish, it really doesn't have to. Is very, just tied to our being, our physical being. And I want to just encourage people who maybe don't have a wide net for different energy modalities, or maybe their experiences have been unfavorable because it has been blended with things that they're not comfortable with, that this can still be something that we work with in the comfort zone of each client. So I think that's one of the more important things that I'd like people to know.
Good, good. And can you tell listeners where they can find you and where your work is, I guess?
Yes, yes. So I'm located in Heath, Ohio. My office is inside of Results Chiropractic, and they can reach me at my website. It's CourtneyChurryLMT.com, or they can find me on Facebook or on Instagram as well if they do a search for Courtney Churry, or if they look for Pathbreaker. A lot of times you'll find things with that too, through the hashtags and connections.
Perfect. I will put all of that information in the show notes.
Great.
Thank you so much. I knew it'd be a good conversation. I think emotion code is really interesting, especially as an energy healer. It's just a different tool in the toolbox, but I think it's incredibly powerful and can be very helpful for people as well as for animals. As always, if you like this podcast, please consider leaving us 5 stars and following. We'd be really grateful. And I'd love to hear in the comments what you think about emotion code, if you have experienced it, if it was helpful, and if you think it would be helpful on your pets. So let us know in the comments. All right, Courtney. Well, this was really great, and I really
Yeah.
appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.